Hi, I'm JHobz.
And I'm Spike Vegeta, coming to you from our channel, Possibly Bad Entertainment.
This is the Raw Dogs Podcast.
Part of the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Possibly bad. Obviously recorded in quarantine.
It's the 20th episode of Raw Dogs.
Yay! We're right into it. Yay!
There's been so many trials and tribulations over these 20 episodes, and we're still figuring out how to podcast.
I didn't realize a phone could fuck up audio equipment like that.
Dylan, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Brad?
I'm good. This is Raw Dogs After Dark. We usually don't record quite so late, but
Very late.
But we're burning the candle at both ends today.
Hey, it's fine. I'm cool with it.
And who are the Raw Dogs?
One, it's me, Dylan, or Big Tex. I really don't care what you call me anymore. The world's a fucked up place. You can call me whatever.
and I'm Brad, Loaf of White Brad.
Loaf of White Brad.
And the Raw Dogs, we do deep dives. We are a bi-weekly part of Hair of the Dogcast. Mm-hmm. The main Dogcast talks about the news and some other more broad topics, but we do deep dives on specific video game topics, sometimes lore, sometimes years, whatever it may be. Today, we are discussing the history of speedrunning.
This one's interesting, Brad, because this is one that I knew very little about and you knew a lot about.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about before I dumped a 6-page outline and 20 YouTube videos on you. What did you know before?
I knew it was a small collective community, especially in the late 90s, that people really started to whole thing started to flourish. I knew of it in the periphery of my life.
Yeah.
I knew people in my high school who really loved certain video games, and they would try to beat each other with their scores, and they would document it, yada, yada. I wasn't ever a part of it. I, to be honest, this is going to be me just asking a lot of questions, because despite all the research I've done, there's a part of me that still does not understand it.
Yeah. So my experience with speedrunning, I guess it started kind of with my brother. He'd start downloading full playthroughs of people playing video games like Mega Man or Castlevania, and he had all of these videos on his computer. And my thought was, this is so weird. Why would you want to watch somebody else play video games? And I resisted for a while, and I honestly never really watched any of the downloaded movies. I think it wasn't really until I started watching some Games Done Quick videos, which the reason I find those to be so valuable is because they have commentators who are explaining what's happening, so I can kind of comprehend what's going on. But I think the only real speedrunning I've ever done of a video game before this episode preparation was probably Mario Kart Double Dash, where I was I was doing a preparation for a tournament, and I actually recorded myself on VHS playing different levels and trying to figure out how to better take shortcuts and stuff like that.
Sure, okay.
So that's probably my first real experience with speedrunning. But last year, I took the Dogcast. My brother and I went out to SGDQ, Summer Games Done Quick 2019. I was fortunate enough to reach out to Spike Vegeta and JHobz beforehand, and I was fortunate enough to get an interview with them. They got me into the Ori and the Blind Forest community after party. And
those ones are wild.
Dude, those guys are great. All of them are great, and we just had a great time, and I wound up meeting Keizaron and Covert Muffin and Kung Fu Fruit Cup, DwangoAC, TASBot, and Omnigamer, which these are all names which might not mean anything to you.
You know what? Like, all of this, it feels like I'm on an alien planet.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So before we get too much further, we'd like to thank our Patreon producers, Mark Nenow, Tyler Keller, and Brian Ward. Thank you all for supporting this show. It's because of people like you that we can afford to not lose money doing a podcast. We're almost going to make money, but not yet. Besides that, we just wanted to say the speedrun community is intense and fervent, and you guys are wonderful and really passionate about what you do. So we are going to strive to get everything as accurate as we can, but also understand.
Well, I think most of what we want to achieve today is I want to ask the right questions so that maybe we can gain some insight for anyone who's even curious about this to kind of have an entrance into the whole community.
And we're also going to be featuring, did a lot of interviews with a lot of different speedrunners, and we got some new clips that we're going to be listening to as well. But up first, we're just going to play a short clip from JHobz and Spike Vegeta on what speedrunning is.
Yeah, effectively, it's just it's a way of gaming that we find interest in, which is just going from the beginning of a game to the end of the game as fast as we can.
Speedrunning is a hobby in which you take a single player experience and turn it into a multiplayer one, which is my favorite thing about it.
Yeah.
I love that about it, because think of how many awesome single player games there are out there that you'd love to play with your friends or talk about with friends and stuff, especially growing up as a kid and everything. I think because of that a lot of people that find speedrunning is, well, I love all these single player games, right? I've felt like I just wanted to play this game by myself sometimes and stuff like that. And so it's a community that really embraces everybody.
I really like that aspect where it's taking a single player game and making it multiplayer, because everyone has played Mario Brothers 3.
Yes.
But it's not one of those things where you sit around with friends and kind of play it together or watch people play it together. You generally don't. Although the more you get into the community, the more you do, and eventually you just get drunk with your friends and watch Mario Maker races.
Yeah,
which is great.
No, that actually kind of changes my perception on it a little. I always thought of it as something competitive, and multiplayer generally is very competitive. But I think it's also nice that he's describing it as almost like a collective experience.
Yeah.
That even when you're doing this, it's not just about you anymore. It's literally taking a video game, breaking it apart, and just enjoying it. I don't know about you, Brad, but I was just thinking about how weird it is that I don't have the ability to just sit down with a game, play the same thing over and over, and try to get really, really good at it.
Before we get any further, after you make that statement, I watched the History of Ninja Gaiden Speedrunning.
I watched that one as well.
From Summoning Salt. Who,
yes.
If you don't know Summoning Salt, go watch all of his videos. But
they're pretty entrancing.
This madman Arcus, he already has the world record. He has done 40,000 runs of Ninja Gaiden, and he's just trying to knock off another second.
I don't have the focus that's required to get this good at a video game. I just don't.
This guy, oh man, he's awesome. He grows a mustache and he puts on a cowboy hat and he starts making up his own sound effects and like terms. Like if you get to all the way to the end with the right RNG, he calls it a lottery ticket. It's fascinating. And I don't have the discipline to do what a lot of these people do, but I have the ability to appreciate it. But let's dive into the history, or as we like to call it, speedrunning history done slow and a little drunk.
Yeah.
And we're
tired.
And we're gonna talk about what a lot of people consider to be the very first world record in video games. Dragster for the Atari 2600. When it came out, the manual for the game challenges you to beat the record, and it has the max high score listed as 5.54 is the top speed. They're like, that's the world record. If you can get it, you're going to be hot shit dog. And this dude, Todd Rogers, claims to get a 5.51, which that's what speedrunning is. It's about doing something the developers didn't think possible to achieve a score or a time that shouldn't be possible.
Which is so interesting. The people who make the game, who theoretically should be the ones to be the best at it because they programmed it, them being surpassed by that, either through reflexes or otherwise, that's actually really cool.
And it's great that Twin Galaxies said that they went with the Guinness World Records, and Guinness World Records said that they went with Activision, and essentially no one really knew where the record started, but he allegedly sent a Polaroid, and everyone just kind of eventually accepted it. And here I'm going to play a clip with my friend Omnigamer.
The main reason that I came on to Dragster at all is just there had been a time that basically had a big mythos about it. It was something that, this is the first speedrunner. He found some way to play the game that the developers never anticipated. He managed to get a faster time than they believed was actually possible, even knowing all the internals and so on. How the story was built up was kind of perfect for what I wanted to describe. Is here's somebody who used something creative something outside of expectations to achieve a faster time, get faster optimization than what was expected. And it's like, all right, this is great. This is just something I can mention. The problem is that the details really didn't stack up.
So Omnigamer is making this book, Speedrun Science. It's essentially the entire history of speedrunning, which the book's amazing. Go get it if you're listening to this. But through his research, he was trying to delve into the world record, and everything, like all of the facts we were looking at, is like, this doesn't make sense. And so he joined the task community, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But essentially, they were able to go into the game and prove without a doubt that his score was just not possible. Todd Rogers kind of gets backed into a corner, and he keeps changing his story like, this is what's going on, this is what's going on, and he never has a concrete answer. And eventually, all of his records are taken away, and it's proved that he's kind of a shithead. And there was a lot of, everything about this guy just stinks. But Omnigamer is able to prove through TASs, which when you actually go into the game's code, you can just see what's happening.
Now, did he try to prove this through a Polaroid, like a picture that he took of his screen?
That's allegedly the proof. They don't know where the Polaroid is anymore, I don't think, either.
So it's all kind of hearsay.
Well, it's all hearsay, and it's just impossible to get a 5.51 in the game.
Right.
Omnigamer is not only able to prove it, he is able to prove that the actual high score is 5.57. And he gets the world record, and he is listed as the world record holder for Dragster. There's 17 other people altogether that also have gotten the score since then, because they know that, this is how you do it.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever played Dragster, by the way?
No.
It's not a game that I would say is fantastic.
No, and essentially what kind of just made it interesting was that it was, if not the first, one of the very first games to have a timer.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the game was to beat it fast. And so people cite it as the first speedrun, the first world record. You could have debates on that, but moving forward, Doom is kind of like the next spot where people like to stop and talk. John Carmack and John Romero, these guys, Doom was revolutionary for a lot of reasons, but something that they put that was pretty unique in there was the ability to record demo files of your playthrough.
Well, famously, it was said that they would brag about they would say the fact that getting through a level and completing it is one thing, but actual skill is the speed at which you can do it.
Yeah, it's fascinating that I think it was Romero who said that, and he's like,
yeah, it was Romero because he was the cocky one.
He's like, okay, yeah, sure, you can beat every bad guy,
Yeah.
and you can only use your fists. But everyone else, like other people can do that. How fast can you do it?
Exactly.
And what made Doom super special is that these demo files were tiny. These could be sent over the internet.
It was just inputs.
It was just inputs.
Honestly, those are my favorite ones to watch.
It is absolutely fascinating when you see people they go into a game and then I like the way that they use the term "the game has been solved." We know every single exploit, possible time save, frame manipulation, skip, RNG. It's bonkers how much time and effort, not even only from the speedrunners, but their community, which are just people that are trying to help people get better at their scores.
Well, you've got to think about not even the person who has to kind of crack these games open and really take a look at how these levels are designed to get like a millisecond's worth of time or a fraction of a millisecond's worth of time out of a specific slight movement. Mm-hmm. It's astonishing because, man, I make a piece of art, and if I spend more than 8 hours on it, I feel like I've overdone it. And I hate myself afterwards.
Yeah, but I get if you make that same piece of art 40,000 times, eventually you're going to really know what you're doing, and you're going to do it right and do it fast. There's something to say about...
That's why forgers are so good.
Michael Jordan shooting all of his free throws. Eventually, you're going to be better at free throws. Some of the big players in the early Doom scene, 1994, we have Chris Norman, who was a female who went by Chris at the time to see if she would be treated differently. Mad props to you, Chris.
She probably was.
She created the LMP Hall of Fame, which collected the most impressive demos. Then we have Doom Honorific Titles, DHT, which they would look at your files, your segmented speedruns, and then if you accomplish this certain task, you'd get like an MD, like a Dr. MD, which would say you are able to do the Schwarzenegger run of this. And eventually, it was like whoever had the most titles at the end.
Oh my God. So when these gentlemen went out to bars and they had to like, present their credentials to prospective girlfriends.
Yes. Can I see your ID? I can do all of Doom with just my fist. Oh, right this way, sir.
Oh, ooh, you have a special side of the bar.
An SWR, I see.
No one can see, and they just punch you right out the back door.
And they just sprint all the way to the end of the bar or something. They air swim through the bar. Simon Widlake was able to take that idea, and he created Compet-N, I don't know how they would say it. Competin', maybe, in November of 1994. And this was the first site that was dedicated to completion runs of the entire game. Something that's special to note about the original Doom scene, it was mostly segmented runs, because that's how the levels would be saved.
Level to level, yeah.
That's how they created
split.
Those.
I know that.
Well, a split's not just level to level. It might be like
only
beating
if you're doing a longer run.
It might be beating a certain boss, getting a certain item, but... Yeah, they were focused more on segmented speedruns, and Competin' was the first time it was dedicated to completion runs of the entire game. And this website was the first time where any percent and 100% runs, that term was coined. So this hardly needs
explaining. It's pretty obvious.
It doesn't need explaining, but...
There was a part of me that's like, we should explain this, but I think the idea is, yes, any percent is just completing the game as fast as you can, and then 100% is getting all the collectibles or items that you could possibly get, and then completing the game.
Up next, we're going to be talking about Quake speedruns, and we're going to have my buddy Covert Muffin. He's going to talk to us a little bit about movement tech.
What a movement-based speed game is the grand majority of the difficulty is the consistency of being able to progress quickly through the game. So there's different movement tech. So if you are unfamiliar with Quake speedrunning, there's something known as strafe jumping. What you end up doing is you use W plus A or W plus D. So A and D are strafe keys that causes you to sidestep from side to side, and W causes you to move forward. So the last component to this is that while you're in the air, if you curl your mouse into that diagonal that you're doing it, so if you're doing W plus D, you're moving up and to the right. And if you're going through air and turn to the right while you're doing that, that causes you to actually build speed. And it does make sense. It's physics that I won't go into, but it's like that's how.
I know you could though.
Yeah. Yes.
That's extremely interesting to me. It reminds me, I watched a Mirror's Edge speedrun, and a lot of this is focused on that as well. Which is weird because that's like a free running game, but if you can like vault yourself over certain obstacles by just twisting in midair the specific way.
It's movement tech is a super unique thing where Castlevania Symphony of the Night, it's actually faster to backdash through the entire game. Or there's Mario 64 segments where you actually have to just like do like your back jump move.
Sure, yeah.
And you can skip through whole stairways. And again, some of you speedrunners, I'm not getting all of these terms right because you all know every name for your skip. Yeah. There's the Alcatraz escape spot in Super Metroid.
Jesus Christ.
And we're trying here, folks. But
well, one of the things I will say is I did watch a bit of a Quake one.
Yeah.
It actually made me dizzy. I couldn't keep going with it.
Yeah, Quake and Doom, they're super fast games. When they're being speedran, it's just flying through this environment. And one of the things, like with Quake, they started Nightmare Speed demos. It was created for only Nightmare speed runs created by Radix in April 97. I mean, every run is on the Nightmare difficulty. And if you watch Quake Done Quick, which is June 97, they were able to string together all of the different segments into what was like the perfect Quake run at the time. And this shit was one of the first times that speedrunning took off.
This is just so weird to me, Brad. I'm going to be completely honest.
I didn't get it for the longest time. I was with you, and it wasn't until I watched a Castlevania speedrun of like AGDQ 2015, one of the early ones, and just this game that was always punishing and mean to me. Just watching somebody just lollygag through the whole thing and do skips and stuff, because you can take damage boosts and get to parts of the level, skip things, and it blew my mind. And watching speedruns of games I don't know, I almost never enjoy.
You have to have played them. And I think that's like, because I watched the Sunshine one as well, Super Mario Sunshine.
Fascinating.
Crazy. The things they do with, baby, the things they do with Flood.
Man.
I'm just like, because I remember I was maybe 11 when that game came out. And I remember struggling with that video game because there are some weird parts.
And the camera, they didn't have the camera perfect yet. It was better than 64, but I mean, it wasn't where they were going to with like Galaxy.
Honestly, the camera was better on 64. That's a different story for another day. There's going to be a Mario retrospective at some time.
Very excited for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Quake Done Quick really took the scene by storm, and they've since then done like Quake Done Quicker, Quake Done Quick with a Vengeance, or whatever. They've released some subsequent ones, but in August of 1997, gunner Andre Moe created Muad'Dib's Quake page because he thought runs should be done.
Excuse me, Muad'Dib.
Muad'Dib.
It's a Dune reference.
It is. Okay. My apologies. I've been playing too much Assassin's Creed or something. Regardless, gunner Andre Moe created this page because he thought runs could be done on any difficulty. Nightmare's great, but why not normal? Why not easy? Why not hard?
And absolutely why not? Because then you could have separate categories.
Fuck, there's a lot of categories now.
Yeah. I took a look at some websites and I'm like, this is, that's some minutia.
April 1998, Nightmare Speed Demos merged with Muad'Dib's Quake page to become Speed Demos Archive. Speed Demos Archive only had the high scores, so it did not function as a leaderboard with like second, third, fourth, fifth, and they could host videos, forums, and explanations for speedruns. This site's still going, still amazing.
Really?
And they specialize in they just host videos, and you can like the creators can talk about what they're doing. There's forums discussing stuff. Speed Demos Archive was prevalent for a long time.
1998, that's not good internet video technology. Were they mostly just demos?
Yeah, mostly I think they were still demo files because
that would make the most sense because there's no way that a video it would take so long. This is still like where dial-up is popular.
So I guess maybe they host videos more after that because I think with Quake they were just probably able to host those like minuscule files where you can save the segments and pass them around.
You just pop them into the program. Yeah.
Up next would be the Metroid 2002. With the widespread popularity of emulators, Super Metroid became popular due to the demo recording features of emulators at the time. So, Dylan, what's an emulator?
An emulator is a program on a computer that mimics the hardware of a console.
And not every emulator is perfect.
No, and I learned that especially when I just got into them probably this past summer.
Okay, you didn't really get into them until this last summer.
Nope. Especially my best example of this is that I downloaded Mother 3. And Mother 3 has a timed rhythm element to it, especially during the battles.
Yeah, you were explaining this to me the other day.
And you can try your best, but it's not going to be perfect. So you have to go into the file. You have to change how everything works just so you can get it right. But when you're using an emulator, that just means you can fuck with every single part of the whole. You don't have to just stop where I stopped. You can change everything about it.
And you're able to do things that are unnatural with normal gameplay. Because, they're able to record demos of these games, but you're also able to adjust, say, the speed. You could adjust
input lag.
All of these things. So originally, a lot of games, they allowed you to run on an emulator or this version or the console version or the many different things, but eventually it was kind of realized, well, we should probably all be running on the same thing since there are variables. So with emulators' new widespread popularity, Super Metroid became a super popular one to speedrun for a couple reasons. The original Metroid was one of the earliest games to introduce special rewards for fast completion times. You get to see a sexy midriff of that Samus Aran.
Yeah, all 5 pixels.
But it was a game that had an in-game timer, and you were given special rewards for completing it fast. Not only that, the Metroidvania style of game is very cool for speedrunning because there is there's so many possible routes.
Yeah, you can break sequence pretty easily.
Sequence breaking is a fascinating aspect of so many different speedruns because
it's sequence breaking. It happens a lot with especially like 3D platformers, but also the most prominent one is probably the Metroidvania genre.
I just watching Bloodborne speedruns and watching how they're able to completely sequence break the game. But a lot of that's through some different categories. Some people want like glitchless categories versus you can do these glitches because if you're jumping over this fence, walking through this building, you're not supposed to be able to walk through, clip through this, swim up to the cathedral or whatever you're doing.
I watched one where early on in the game, someone... They get up onto a fence and they move along the fence and there was no commentary, but then they swing the sword a certain way and suddenly they're in a completely different part of the game that was normally inaccessible because famously from software games, they have very multi-layered level-based areas.
It's based on exploration and they're all interconnected, which it's similar to a Metroidvania where Super Metroid's great because you're supposed to have to defeat like these 4 bosses, attain these different items.
The gems. They're gems.
The gems. And so there's a lot of routing options. And Metroid became super popular for that. We're not even going to talk about movement tech in Metroid.
Don't worry about it.
Metroid Prime Discoveries was a community focused on sequence breaking Metroid Prime, created by Jean-Sébastien Dubois. Metroid 2002 was created by Nate Yankee. I want to say Yankee.
It's Yankee, yeah. In
August 2003 to be a resource for sequence breaking both Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion.
Came out on the same day.
Yeah, but they merged with Metroid Online and became the one resource for Metroid sequence breaking info.
Have you ever played Metroid Prime?
I've beat Metroid Prime.
Love that video game.
Dude, did you watch any of the speedruns of Metroid Prime?
No, I actually never got into those.
So, it's crazy what they do. One of the things that they do is called scan dashing. So when you're scanning an item with that special visor, you actually like move faster. The movement tech, you like move faster going sideways. So they scan something specifically just so they can like get a little a boost to the side. They're able to jump over parts of the map they're not supposed to. They're getting the double jump or this or that much quicker than they should.
Christ.
So I'm going to talk about just one piece of movement tech from Super Metroid called the Mach Ball. So
the Mach Ball.
You start running, holding the dash and the direction button. You hit and hold the jump button. Release the direction, tap down to go to morph ball. Tap down just before you hit to perform a soft morph. So essentially, you're carrying your running speed while you drop into the morph ball, and you have run speed in the morph ball. Able to sequence break, I think, 2 spots in the game.
Now, is this being done with just 2 thumbs? Or is someone bringing in an index?
No, this is just 2 thumbs, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I could achieve this type of timing without using my index finger on top of it.
And you'll see people do a lot of weird things with speedruns.
Well, I've seen an Ocarina of Time run through where the guy literally he cups the entire controller and he's just doing it's like he's on a keyboard and he's just inputting commands.
It's like watching one of the most virtuoso piano players playing some crazy thing that shouldn't be possible, but you're watching something with someone playing video games.
I mean, you want to know what? That is a really apt comparison. Mm-hmm. A lot of what most instruments are is having the right input at the right time.
To take the music analogy a little further, they're doing frame perfect tricks. Now, most video games today, and a lot of like even the Nintendo run on 60 frames per second. Some older ones are 30 frames per second. Some are even different than that. But when someone talks about a frame perfect trick, that means they have 1/60th of a frame to hit a trick.
Yeah.
And some of these speedrunners are hitting frame perfect tricks often.
Yep.
That's 1/60th of a second that that is muscle memory. That is rhythm. That is skill beyond what almost anyone has. And I think it's something that a lot of people could do. It would take just the dedication, the practice that these speedrunners have is mind boggling.
Well, one of the things I was also paying attention to is I watched a few Dark Souls speedrun. Obviously, I've talked enough about Dark Souls in my lifetime. But there are some where it's the original one with no patches.
Yeah.
Because there's an area in the game called Blight Town. And in Blight Town, it depends on how many characters are on screen or how many enemies, but it can slow down to maybe 10 frames a second.
Yes. That is a major problem that speedrunners have with Nintendo games in particular. But
well, I mean, any NES game, if there's too much going on screen, it's going to cause a lot of lag.
Yep, that's why Nintendo runners on like Mario Brothers 3, when they get into World 8, it's auto scrollers. So what they actually have to do is just maintain defeating all the bombs. That's all they have to do because they can't go faster. So what they're doing is just trying to make sure there's not too many items on screen.
Yes.
And lag reduction is a big problem. So November 2003, we asked some of our Twitter followers what their favorite speedruns were. At SirVG, he says from Twitter, Radix's 1 hour, 37-minute segmented Metroid Prime 100% run. Without this, Speed Demos Archive wouldn't have exploded in popularity, and Games Done Quicks probably wouldn't exist. So Radix, Nolan Flug, released his 100% segmented run of Metroid Prime, 1 hour, 37 minutes. It gained widespread attention. It was being passed around everywhere, and this is another major moment in speedrunning history. You have Quake Done Quick, and then you have this Metroid Prime run that people were going crazy for. Speedruns are growing in popularity. It's still not easy to find them all. This is before YouTube. Mm-hmm. This is before Twitch, and this is one of them that really caught people's attention.
This was the era of Google Video, if you do recall.
I don't recall Google Video.
I do for some reason. I'm not sure why that's hidden in my brain, but here we are. Well, I mean, the truth is those games are so about exploration that you know that meme with Charlie from It's Always Sunny, and he's got all the shit lined up on a board, and it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like you go from here, then you go to here, but then you go to here, and then
I scan dash over to there.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
the bomb missile early.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about tool-assisted speedruns. So this term was coined in early 1999 during Doom speedrunning, although they were also called built demos back then.
Yeah, that makes sense, though.
Andy Arikin Kempling released a modified version of the Doom source code that made it possible to record demos in slow motions and in several sessions. So you're able to, I don't know if it was frame by frame, but you can move a little bit at a time in slow motion. So you can plan, I'm going to hit this guy, this guy, this guy. You're able to very carefully do every trick, move forward. You can like go back and change something. So it was possible for them to manipulate a run to be specifically and precisely what they wanted to do through taking the time and making sure it was perfect, which you couldn't do this in real time. Eventually these fuckers do. But back then, this was a way for someone to make a theoretical best version.
This reminds me a lot of a game that was released about 3 years ago, Super Hot. Have you ever played it?
Super Hot.
I love Super Hot. This is a lot of... I would imagine that the people who made Super Hot were very influenced by stuff like this.
Yeah, because everything slows down. You're able to think about your next move.
Well, you if you stand still, nothing moves.
Yeah, isn't that
so
fun?
It's like, it's perfect for that idea.
June 1999, a website, Tools Assisted Speedruns, was created by Esko Koskima, Peo Sjoblom, and Jonathan Donner. Forgive me.
Yeah.
I think I might have done okay.
I think you did okay.
That site turned into an archive August 10th, 2001. But mid-2003, Morimoto and his Super Mario Brothers 3 run took the world by storm. I'm going to let my buddy...
I watched that, by the way.
I'm going to have my buddy DwangoAC explain kind of what happened.
And the backstory is that in 2002, someone named Morimoto released a video, a WMV file, predating the days of YouTube. And in this video, he demonstrated getting 99 lives, extremely close encounters in Super Mario Bros. 3 with piranha plants, near-death experiences, ridiculous jumping, all kinds of things that seemed completely implausible, and completed the whole game in 11 minutes, which was a pretty good feat. And the problem was that, being before YouTube, it was distributed as a WMV file that just wandered around file share sites. And it made the Speed Demos Archive folks very, very upset because they saw it as nothing more than a fraud. However, other people like Biscuit, who founded NES Videos, which became TAS Videos, saw it and realized, hey, there's something interesting to be done here. TASvideos.org is specifically about tool-assisted speedruns with annotation. Because if you're going to play in the Doped Olympics, you should probably say you're in the Doped Olympics, if you will.
That's funny.
So Morimoto released this Super Mario Brothers 3 run. He's a Japanese dude, and this video was taking over like the internet to an extent. People didn't know it was a tool assisted speedrun,
Which I think that's all due to the language barrier. I remember reading a lot about this, and it's mostly like this guy didn't claim anything more than what he was doing, and he also wasn't really bragging about it either.
No, it was, here's the run, here's a website, go ahead.
And so I think it was blown out of proportion due to competitiveness.
Well, I think a lot of people felt threatened because there's speedrun community where they were very serious. These are players performing these speedruns. This was a threat where how do we verify if something's real anymore? And this has been an issue ongoing forever because cheating is an issue which people have been, I mean, the people that are doing the real policing are the other experts in the community because they are better able to see this is not possible what they did here. What they do with even like Mario 64, people were faking their runs. They took all of the audio into Audacity where you can see this imperceptible little audio skip, which you wouldn't like hear if you were watching the video, but you can see it. And
now I like in watching, especially with like NES games, I found that there's such a delicate minutia that you can really take a look at that all of this becomes nearly like that era of gaming becomes potentially the most exploitable. I watched that the history of Castlevania speedrunning and like with like damage boosts and stuff like that, how everyone was kind of building on top of each other. And I noticed that well, first of all, he doesn't tend what's the name of that YouTuber again?
Summoning Salt?
Summoning Salt, yeah. He doesn't tend to acknowledge the people who tried to cheat. But then when
he's good at not acknowledging them,
Yeah, he doesn't at all. But then I read a little bit because I'm a big fan of the Castlevania series, just like you, Brad. And I saw that a lot of people really tried to weasel their way in on that one.
Tool-assisted speedruns, Speed Demos Archive was outright against this. They said, we do not support this. We think it is dangerous to our community. And late 2003, TAS Videos was created. It was originally known as NES Videos. Was created by Joel Biscuit Ulioma, we'll go with. Uloma, maybe.
I think your first one was closer, but I don't know.
It was originally only for NES Videos because one thing that is
emulator was the one suitable the only one suitable at the time. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
The emulator for the NES was more suitable because emulating these more complicated consoles was very difficult.
Well, they only got the Dolphin working about 3 years ago.
Yeah,
which is the GameCube.
Dude, they finally were able to get TAS runs on Switch now, which I'm very excited about.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
We're going to take a quick break and get some more beers, listen to some of the other amazing content from the Greenlit Podcast Network. Check them out. And we're also going to listen to a clip before we go of DwangoAC talking about the importance of console tool-assisted speedruns versus emulation tool-assisted speedruns. So we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm DwangoAC, keeper of TASBot, and I have opinions on console verification and the importance of being able to play games on real hardware. The very definition of an emulator is to be like the real thing while not actually being the real thing. An emulator in any capacity is different no matter how accurate your code or how careful you are with your FPGA clocks. Even if your precious emulator is cycle accurate, and who cares about the CPU you have to buy to get it to run, I almost guarantee there's still a corner case somewhere. There's something that hasn't been quite discussed well enough inside of the TAS Videos community, and I think it's a pretty glaringly important angle. There are some runs like Mario Kart 64 that use the exact same file that the emulator uses, and by definition are using precisely the same input, but when you play them back on a real console, they differ by literally seconds by the end of a long run. Some people argue that the file type we use to perform a console verification versus a movie file that it was recorded in the emulator is somehow better or worse. But that's not really the issue. The real issue is the emulator isn't as good as the real hardware, and deep down, we all really know this. Now, we don't shame emulators, consoles, or anyone else in the TAS Videos community. Not even the consoles themselves are perfect. We've proven that repeatedly by demonstrating that components, especially on a Super Nintendo, that's now decades old at this point, are no longer able to perform the way they did at one point in time. For instance, the clock on a Super Nintendo's APU has skewed due to it being based on a ceramic oscillator. Over time and temperature differences, it's no longer the same. Even when the consoles were brand new, there are cases when the specification that the game designers programmed to failed when the cold hard realities of the laws of nature took their toll. Things like temperature changes, even when it was brand new, were enough to make a difference. Emulator authors should always strive to be better. Console maintainers should always strive to be better. TAS authors should strive to be better. But the reality is, even though we're all about being as close to we can be to perfect in the TAS Videos community, we have to face realities. We have to be lenient on emulators, or no TAS would ever be acceptable. We have to be lenient on consoles, or no verification would be acceptable. We have to be lenient on TAS authors, or no art they would be making would ever be deemed worthy. I believe the far more productive conversation should be about the level of care that has to go into describing what steps it took to make the console verification happen. What specifically needed to be done as far as deviations were concerned to get a console verification to work. Did we have to use non-invasive hardware nudges, like using a biased voltage or messing with a clock line? Did we have to make more aggressive changes, like using a different component, perhaps replacing the clock? Every single situation is going to be unique because there's a wide range of consoles from the 1970s to today, and each one requires different aspects to get it to work correctly. And at some point, we might decide that we can't stomach some of those deviations, and that's okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What's obvious at this point is that we will frequently have what I'll call artifacts, something that makes the core essence of inputs in the order that they need to be played back, as if it were a player piano playing back a piano roll, along with various support files, such as, say, game-specific code we had to change, not code about the game, but code specific to a game, or hardware modifications we had to do. Maybe we used offset files for lag adjustment, or we had to use different timing methods, such as using a window mode. We need all of that documented. All of those artifacts have to be recorded in some way, because without it, future historians reviewing console verification and games being played on the real console will be robbed of what they need to piece everything back together, especially if they want to try to recreate it themselves. Right now, TAS Videos does lack some of that capacity, and inside of the sub-community that you could call the TASBot community, we're actively working on making a site possible for this. Specifically, TyKevin83 is making runs.tas.bot for this kind of content. In summary, we should have reasonably lenient rules, but we should also have strict quality requirements for documentation. I don't believe that any other path forward ensures that what we're doing can be successful for historians to look back on console verification and understand what happened. It's a fascinating field that has some interesting nostalgia aspects to it, but in its own way is art, and I want to see that flourish.
Hey, Benito. I've been reading the Bible lately, and nobody ever told me how many talking dogs and wizard battles were in this thing.
Well, Chris, you know what I always say. If you can understand Star Wars, you can understand the Bible.
Apocrypals, part of the Greenlit Podcast Network.
Hey there, this is Jeremy Parrish, and if you're a fan of classic video game soundtracks, or if you just love 20-minute rock epics about war-ready armadillos that battle Catholicism, you should listen to Alexander's Ragtime Band. Join the power trio of myself, Elliot Long, and James Eldred each month as we talk about the most pretentious music of all, progressive rock, right here on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
With what he just said, I found one word to just like, it was flashing in my brain the entire time. It's all about minutia. It's all about equal footing on that minutia. Mm-hmm. So if you can have different levels of competition based on what you're actually using to perform the game.
And if you understood some of what he was saying, because, man, he's a He's a genius.
Yeah.
Listen to the entire interview where he explains to me like the history of TASs and just the fact that the Super Nintendo has 4 more buttons that they're like not even mapped in the controller. Because there's certain inputs that you can't do.
Like a double button press. And
Well, there's also just 4 more signals because they just have to send in like a certain number of signals. So there's 4 more than what the button, like the controllers have.
Ooh.
And they're able to do a lot of special
I had no
stuff
idea
with
about
that.
That's cool.
Dwango is the man and so intelligent. So check out that interview if you're curious. But live streaming is like kind of the next huge event that's taking place in speedrunning.
It's one of the purest forms of verification.
Well, and it's something that, I mean, this is before Twitch. So live streaming was still pretty tough to do back then. The Speed Gamers, the first speedrunning marathon was live streamed in March 2008. And the Speed Gamers, they streamed every mainline Zelda game within 3 days to raise money for St. Jude Children's Hospital.
I gotta say, when researching the history of this, I'm like, man, what a pure-hearted, awesome thing to do. I do have to give them extreme props. Like, it's just like, we were going to do this anyway, but we made it an event, and we asked people for money, but we didn't beg them.
Yeah.
And they still gave a shitload of cash.
It's like, my parents are pissed that all I do is play Castlevania 3 in the basement all day. Well, Mom, guess what? I raised money for charity. It was just for the naysayers, like, back off. I'm going to play this game 20,000 more times today, and I'm going to raise money.
Yeah, Mom, I'm unemployed, but my podcast is a Patreon that I don't make any cash from.
We're going to buy a new tote.
It's gonna be better than the weird green one.
But you're right. It's absolutely they're such a selfless community, and they're so catering to make sure everyone is welcome, and accepted, and that they're doing it for all the right reasons, and it's so intensely positive that it's like controversial when a speedrunner wants to do something other than do it for charity, where there was an instance where one speedrunner just tried to offer classes where if you wanted to learn how to speedrun this game he was great at, you could have paid classes and he would privately tutor you.
Which I don't think is wrong.
No, not at all. But it's just that community was so set and we do this for charity. How dare you?
The love of the game.
And I'm happy that a lot of different things have stemmed from that. But getting back to the Speed Gamers, they did 7 more marathons over the next 2 years. They never really, broke through. They came up with the original idea, but they weren't the ones that kind of really made it. But speedrunslive.com was created in 2009 by Narcissa Wright and Daniel Hart. Narcissa Wright, everyone knows, of course, from her amazing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time world records, which is another one of those just amazing speedruns. But Narcissa Wright and Daniel Hart, they created speedrunslive.com, which is a way to showcase speedrunning races in real time with a set goal. Had dedicated leaderboards showing who the top speedrunner is at the time in the game. So essentially, this was before Twitch, a way where they could live stream some of their attempts, and definitely a precursor to what Twitch ultimately became. But Speedruns Live was where it was at for a while, and then Twitch was, of course, born in 2011. And
I had no idea. It was, before researching this, I had no clue that Twitch was that old.
I don't use Twitch. Occasionally, since I'm friends with some of these speedrunners, I'll hop on to see what like JHobz is up to, this or that. But
I've messed with the idea in my own head of being a streamer. I don't think I have what that takes, though. I literally don't have. I think I would be very depressing and probably controversial.
Which I think is your strong points, and that people would.
I think that might actually work.
People would latch onto that, of course. You'd be like that depressed guy, like, yeah, well, in Doom, of course, Muad'Dib would have done this instead. But yeah, Twitch is something that I don't really use, but it is integral to almost every speedrunner today because after it became kind of prevalent, a lot of these people that are able to speedrun 40,000 attempts in Ninja Gaiden, it's because that they can go on Twitch and they have a number of people that are following them that are entertained by their personality, and they give them money to keep doing what they're doing. If people weren't paying these people to sit at home and play Kingdom Hearts randomizers, they wouldn't be doing it. Well, I mean, they would, but they wouldn't be able to do it as often or to the skill set that they have.
I mean, no, yeah, absolutely. It's funny, H-Bomber Guy, he's a YouTube...
H-Bomber Guy's wonderful.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I love all of his videos, but there's one where he explains the appeal of speedrunning, and it opened me up to this idea that a lot of these streamers, they are these like dedicated, tireless individuals who love just this one thing so much that they can devote a level of focus that I will never achieve. And then they just have it. It's there.
And I want to talk about my personal speedrun voyage near the end of the podcast.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Getting back to this, speedrun.com was launched in 2014 for managing leaderboards and resources. Very cool, very important. That's like the main spot now. Mm-hmm. All the categories, all the records, it's all verified. Very cool. But the next big topic of note will be games done quick, which GDQ, as they say, because GDQ is, I mean, all these other steps have been leading up to this getting bigger, but games done quick.
This is the crux,
the tipping point where it has become pervasive, and even people that don't know, like didn't know Metroid Prime speedruns or Quake Done Quick, people are at least familiar with games done quick. If you're in the gaming community, you've heard the term kill the animals or save the animals at some point. Yeah. And games done quick. So as one of the Speed Demos Archives site administrator, Mike Uyama, he was inspired by the speed gamers and took the idea of marathons and ran with it. We're going to hear another clip. This is from Spike and JHobz again.
Around 2010, a guy named by Mike Uyama decided to raid his mother's basement with 20-something other nerds.
Well, and they were originally
classic game. They were originally going to be at MagFest.
They were going to be at like a convention center or hotel or whatever, and something fell through. And so it was lucky that like Mike was, hey, my mom's cool.
Sure,
use our basement.
20 grown people downstairs, and you could put it on. And I never remember because that was one of the few events I didn't go to. But it was a couple days. They raised like $10,000, which at the time was like, all right,
amazing.
And sure enough, we're here. Not even quite 10 years later, and they're raising like millions of dollars. And we just do speedruns all week long.
I love that the first game's done quick. It was supposed to be a part of MagFest. Everything fell through. And the guy in charge is like, all right, my mom's basement, she said it's cool. That nugget of purity has somehow managed to maintain while it's grown to the behemoth that it is.
I mean, it's for a certain group of people, it's their fucking Woodstock.
It is their fucking Woodstock. And it's like, the first time someone goes to like Lollapalooza, like you'll never get it if you don't go. And
have you even listened to Fish?
But I mean, that's what it is like. It was like that for me as well, because my first time going to SGDQ, I anticipated it to be one thing, and you go there, and it turns out you actually only watch a quarter, maybe a tenth of the speedruns you thought you were going to watch, because you're just hanging out with the community, you're partying in the rooms, you're playing these games, because it's 24/7 for a week, and you'll be at like 3:30 in the morning playing Guitar Hero with a stranger, just strung out, half drunk, and you're like, this is cool.
Yeah, I was before all this.
That was my happened, Woodstock, baby.
Before all this nonsense happened, especially like COVID and stuff like that, I was really looking forward to going.
We were going to go. We were going to be covering this SGDQ 2020 live.
That would have been. And I feel like this is something you kind of have to experience there and in the moment.
It's because I mean, when it's done live, it's 7 days. and it's great if you can see it live, but it's so tough because we all have jobs, and it's so long. Yeah. And it's great that they can do it, but what I always end up doing is just making a list of the runs I'm really excited to see, and then you hear about the other highlights, and you go back and you watch them when you can. Right. But it's very different because it's one thing to watch the blindfolded Punch-Out Wii run on YouTube, but when you're there, it's insane. And it's exciting, but games done quick. The first one, Classic Games Done Quick, which they focused mostly on the Nintendo, was January 1st through 3rd, 2010. It raised $10,531. No small amount from a mom's basement.
No.
April 7th through 10th, 2011, returned as Awesome Games Done Quick and raised $52,000, 519.
Jesus Christ.
Summer Games Done Quick they made it 2 events throughout the year, and it started in 2011. AGDQ 2014 broke into the millions for the first time, and it was the first time attendees outnumbered speedrunners, where there were more people there just to watch than people playing the games.
Do you think they want to pay off my student loan debt?
Dude, okay. If you can get the world record for Mario Brothers 3, I guarantee by the time that happens, you can have paid off your student loan debt through streaming.
Oh, fuck.
Mitch Flower Power just broke it the other day.
Oh, fuck. You know what? I'm okay at that game. I'm not great, especially the later levels.
Well, you have no chance then.
Son of a bitch. I got the time.
I mean, you just needed to do like 40,000 runs.
Okay, great, cool.
AGDQ 2020 raised $3,164,002. Here's my buddy Keizaron explaining what Awful Games Done Quick is.
How can we possibly talk about the history of speedrunning and the history of Games Done Quick without talking about the Awful Block? It's your boy Keizaron here. You know me. I love Awful Block. I'm always involved in it in some way, shape, or form, whether I'm doing a run, whether I'm on the couch, or whether I'm honestly just talking a bunch of mess on Twitter about it. It's such a special block because even though it's the worst time of the night, specifically for Americans, I know that Europeans, it's in the morning, and further on, they can actually see it during dinner maybe. But you have to stay up so ridiculously late to watch all these awful games be played. But they're always such fun runs. They're always busted in some way, shape, or form. And then on top of everything else, it just has some of my favorite moments. Not to toot my own horn, but I think all my Animorphs runs are pretty funny. There's also runs like the EnviroBear 2000 run by Zik3, Sneaky, and others. It's just ridiculous. The crowd gets so into it. They're chanting bear. They're chanting eat the berries, all this stuff. And then I really, really liked Mike Uyama's Super Highlight run. I was personally on the couch for that, and even though I knew nothing about the run, it was nothing but laughter, laughter, and laughter. And I think that's what makes Awful Block such a huge thing when it comes to GDQs.
Awful Games Done Quick is one of my favorite parts of the event because, invariably when you're speedrunning for 6-7 days straight, there's going to be people that have to run the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. section, and people get loopy. They're smart because they make Awful Games Done Quick where they take Shrek Forever After or Toy Story for the Super Nintendo, and they speedrun games that shouldn't be getting speedran, and it's so fun and stupid that it becomes loopy and just fascinating to watch.
There is a game I think I could actually do this with.
Which one would you do?
It's called Minority Report Everybody Runs.
It's for the GameCube?
Yes.
I just remember the case.
Okay. I was obsessed with this video game, and I probably know it inside and out to a point that I could potentially do this for Awful Games Done Quick.
Okay. So, Minority Report for the GameCube.
Yeah.
If you had to predict what the speedrun record would be for this game,
I'm going to guess that it's under 2 hours.
Would any more specific?
I'm going to say 1 hour, 10 minutes.
Okay. We're fucking pretty good. 1 hour, 17 minutes,
Hell
23
yes.
seconds. And I want you to know there's currently only 2 people that have submitted runs. If you wanted
to, saying I could compete next year,
dude, if you just completed a run and submitted it, you'd be the 3rd place record holder.
I might have trouble finding the game.
You could be the 3rd place record holder just by submitting a run.
Oh my God, I might do it just for the dog cast.
Minority Report, everybody runs. Stay tuned,
Okay.
everybody,
All right.
for that.
Very good.
One of my favorite awful games on quick runs is, of course, Keizaron's Animorphs.
Animorphs had a video game?
Well, they had a Game Boy Advance. I want to say it was a Game Boy Advance one,
okay.
which was, or maybe a Game Boy Color.
It's probably Color because that's when the TV show came out.
It was a Pokemon ripoff.
Oh,
You
Lord.
acquire morphs like you acquire Pokemon.
Oh no!
It's so broken, and it's fascinating because Keizaron's got he's got so much charisma. You can watch him do terrible at this Animorphs game, which is not designed to be won. And he recently played it again because he failed the first run. I think it was 2015, and then he came back and did it earlier this year. The same game, they let him play it again, and he beat it just 2 minutes after the estimation, which most of the time you don't go over estimate because it was
Are there a lot of like variables in the game, like
it's just
randomized crap?
It's so stupid. So there's even like a whole mission level that is not accessible through the regular game. You have to enter a password for that. I don't think anyone ever they found out about this after the original run because no one is spending time on the Animorphs game.
Yeah, why would they?
God bless you, Keizaron.
Okay.
He also speedran Animorphs Shattered Reality, which is like a Crash Bandicoot ripoff.
There's more than one Animorphs game.
There's 3, I'm pretty sure, because there's a DOS one. Keizaron and I went over it in our interview. Check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also the Toy Story run, where the entire couch, which when I say the couch, it means the commentator sitting behind the runner, everyone's very drunk. You can tell at least the one dude is fucking sublimely the perfect level of drunk where you are hilarious and what we strive for but never achieve.
Now, hold on. If I were actually on the couch, as you say, most of mine would be like, hey, look at that shit. Wow. It's pretty good.
He just jumped over the bad guy.
Oh, dude, I couldn't do that. That's basically what it all breaks down to.
One of the cool
Fuck.
The couch is an interesting aspect because sometimes it is the other most prominent speedrunners in these categories. Sometimes it's your close friends, so you have like a comfort thing. There are people that know you. I was watching the Tetris Effect speedrun live, SGDQ 2019, and the guy running it, he's like, I was talking to these 2 guys while I was practicing, and they've never seen the game before. I was just talking to them, so they're on the couch. And one of the guys is just super clever because he's doing the run. He's like,
and how many other Tetris games have a volcano?
It was just like the right commentary from someone who doesn't know at all anything about the game where he's asking the right questions. It was super funny.
Oh, yeah.
But having the right couch is a thing. Awful Games Done Quick is great. There are some other notable speedrunning events. Now, I don't know if you watched any of RPG Limit Break, because I know this one would be up your alley if you haven't yet.
I do believe I saw a bit of Chrono Trigger from this. Mm-hmm. But that's essentially it.
I watched an entire 7.5 hour speed run of Final Fantasy VII.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, it's fascinating.
I can only imagine.
The speedrunner doesn't talk almost the whole time. Can you imagine his like pre-run? I'm going to make sure to only eat this and drink this before the run to make sure that I don't have to go to the bathroom for this long. They were explaining everything the right way, but the reason that the speedrunner wasn't talking was because in every screen with random battles, he is doing specific step counts to manipulate RNG to not get random battles. That is so mind-boggling to me. Like every screen he knows I have to do 20 steps this way, 5 steps that way.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen a like the breakdown in programming? Basically, a lot of what random encounters are is it's like a block that moves across the screen, and if you happen to hit one of these invisible blocks, that's when the random encounter occurs.
And while we're talking about this, it's important to note that speedrunning with any level of RNG, you can have a perfect speed run for 50 minutes, 2 hours, 6 hours, whatever the game requires.
Yeah.
And you can get slapped in the face with RNG. And my favorite point of example for this is Super Mario Brothers 3, where you get in World 8, and there's that section where you have to go over the little, I don't even know what you want to call them, those little blocks where the hands can grab you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And each one, there's 3 of them, is a 50-50 chance you'll get grabbed. No matter how good you're doing, everything perfect until then. it's 1 in 8, you won't get any of those. And unless you get a 1 in 8, that's 30 seconds added to your run. So you do everything perfectly. Everything is shot in the foot by that one thing that you have no control over. And it's one thing for a task run because we got it figured out. We manipulated that RNG. It's just this 2 frames this way, 2 frames that way. They know what they're doing, but it's impossible. And God bless you, because when there's something that's out of your control that can just destroy runs, that would break me.
Well, that's why Chrono Trigger is cool, because it's not a ton of random encounters.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
There's so many scripted encounters in that you can kind of like get a base idea, which is why it's so popular with streaming in general, especially like live playthroughs. You just know exactly what you're going to get, and people aren't going to get bored because, I don't know, like I watched Game Grumps, they quit halfway through their run, but theirs is actually fantastic.
We have RPG Limit Break, which they focus strictly on playing RPGs, which I do love. I love RPGs, but I can understand how watching FF7, FF8, and FF9 in a row, that's 16, 20 some hours of games, but I would recommend checking out the FF8 one. I think it'd be fascinating for you just to see the way the systems are actually set up.
I've seen quite a few of those, yeah.
And everyone wants to break that game a little bit by getting the great cards and getting the right armor and things early in the game.
Yeah, if your goal is the card game, I guess that's a completely different speed run.
And there is Frame Fatales, which is an all-girls speedrunning event. I'm going to let Kung Fu Fruit Cup talk about this.
The purpose of Frame Fatale was to showcase that there are more women than previously thought who do speedrun, and encourage more women to get into speedrunning to apply to GDQs to help boost up that percentage in general. It was just a way to help encourage girls in gaming and just help be like, hey, girls speedrun too. You can check out some awesome ones here. So it's an encouraging event, and it was really fun.
And it's one of those situations where I'm so happy that there is special representation for women in speedrunning, because I think it's just really cool that it is a safe spot for women to want to be a part of the community, where it is such a community that preaches acceptance and equality, that people of all walks of life feel comfortable to come forward and want to be a part of it because they know that they won't be ridiculed for who they are. And that's, I mean, God bless the speedrunning community, because they are very wholesome and accepting of everybody.
I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, if you're good at playing the game, you should just be praised for being good at the game.
Yeah. Then there's European Speedrunner Assembly is another one.
Never even heard of it.
No, there's so many. Possibly Bad. It's a Twitch channel, YouTube site ran by Spike, Vegeta, and JHobz, and they'll host special races or opportunities for speedrunners to showcase their talents and different things there. Speedrun Sessions is ran by Grand Poo Bear and Red Bull. I'm going to let Pooh, not Winnie, but Grand Poo, talk about that.
Grand Poo Bear Speedrun Sessions, and it's something that I'm doing in tandem with Red Bull, and we're just basically taking speedrunning to barcades. Yeah, most of the speedrunning events are these week-long or weekend-long, 24-hour, 7 days marathons. They're just so big and expansive, and it's like, instead of that, I just bring these small portions of these events to people at barcades of their own. So they get like the full kind of weird GDQ experience, all in one night with alcohol.
I like that bit at the end.
Grand Poo Bear brings some of the greatest, like 3 or 4, a small number of the greatest speedrunners to a barcade locally to you. And you get to go there and drink and just watch somebody like play Legend of Zelda or play Mario Brothers. And that's a much different environment where it's almost like going out to see your favorite band play a show.
I mean, like if they just popped in for a session at a specific like bar, they would be known at.
If I heard that Mitch Flower Power was going to be at Up Down Milwaukee and I could watch one of the greatest Mario Brothers players live and just kind of have a couple beers with my boys, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I'd go see that.
I'd go see that. And another thing that they do there, it's called crowd control, which is super unique. I'll let Grand Poo Bear explain this as well.
Crowd Control, which is probably our flagship product, and that is a Twitch extension that actually allows viewers to alter the game live as you're playing. Ocarina of Time with Crowd Control, and you can do things like make Link like a paper Link. You can change the color of the fairies, high gravity, low gravity, kill the player outright, change the text. Like, we can change the language of the text. Like, you know how annoying that is?
That's the worst troll ever. Yeah,
exactly. You like pick up something, you have no idea what they're saying. It's like super great.
So that's a way that people can interact with the player that they're watching live and also manipulate the game to fuck with them.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Twitch Plays Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example because that is a sea of people.
Yeah.
Some of them trying to do the right thing and most of them trying to troll.
Yeah, but it still ended up being okay.
And one of the most epic moments in video game history. I don't know how that entire Twitch Plays Pokemon thing, I happened to be watching live at the end. I was like, they did it.
It's weird.
That's kind of ultimately like through the history portion of this. We did want to talk a little bit, just kind of more about our favorite speed runs and some other things that are important. Some terminology. We kind of talked over a lot of the terminology stuff. Some of the categories in speedrunning, they have 100%, any percent, low percent, which is actually different than any percent in that sometimes
it's achieve a certain amount.
Well, it's more you either have to achieve a certain amount or it's more difficult to complete a game with a lower percentage and it might take longer. Glitchless, where
you can't exploit
essentially
through just shit that wasn't intentionally programmed.
It's like Mirror's Edge. You can really break the game through glitches, but is it more fun to actually watch somebody play through the game properly? Because
I'm more of a fair play guy myself.
There's arguments for all of it,
Yeah.
There's some really stupid ones too, where someone's got like the speed run for beating Mirror's Edge 15 times in a row, and he's got the record because no one else has done it.
That's stupid. I'm sorry.
Dude, a really weird one to me is reverse boss order.
I like this.
It's fascinating. But
I watched Symphony of the Night one of this.
Because you have to, there's like the logical order of bosses, but it's being able to manipulate the game to such an extent.
Yeah.
You can go to the pretty much the last boss, second to last boss,
yeah,
and go backwards through them.
Yeah, and they do it very deftly with some of the worst weapons in the game.
Watching someone who has completely mastered a game so much that you can fight one of the end bosses with early game armor and equipment through item manipulation, through crafting, through understanding whatever magical abilities you have, and have a consistent run, which is difficult, but still able to achieve these gargantuan tasks is fantastic. Donkey Kong Country also has a reverse boss order, which is pretty fun.
That's not as difficult because you're basically the same throughout that game.
Did you watch what tool assisted speedruns did you watch before this?
Well, you showed me that Celeste one before, and then I just got interested in seeing most of it, so I watched, I think, the same exact tool assisted. Then there was a Mario Brothers one.
Yep.
That I watched, which was entirely fascinating because it was done in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even have to think about the video. I was just like, oh, okay, now it's done. I'm like, oh, I was cooking while I watched it. So I was just literally like, I turn and I flip something on the pan and suddenly I look over and it's just like, oh, okay,
he's in World 8.
Oh, he's by Bowser now. You find that a lot of these tool-assisted games are done on 2D platformers because that seems to be the easiest way to program them because you can get pixel perfect.
Well, actually, I mean, that's what they bring a lot to the games and quicks, but it's because with console verification and running on consoles, it's so tough because Dwango was explaining with the Super Nintendo, there's a ceramic oscillator, and even with disk speeds are variable for loading time, so you can't have consistent inputs. and that's why it's tough. But they're able to show. They did like Monkey Ball and Mario Kart Wii. They showed some tasks, which they just showed. They showed the replays. They were able to load the replays and show what people are able to do. Which that's kind of what Dwango was talking about earlier, where you got to be lenient on emulators and consoles. We're just trying to show things. We're trying to show what's possible, but they're able to do Breath of the Wild tasks now, which it's very interesting. And what we didn't talk about before is TASBot is a Rob the Robot. It's essentially that's housing the hardware that is able to do these tasks inside between his hands, something that's created out of Legos. So the hardware is inside of Legos, and they just hook up the inputs to that. And TASBot has become a bit of a celebrity himself around there.
He's fucking cool.
Dude, TASBot, that guy fucks.
That guy rips.
He's noted.
He lights up and shit.
He's noted for being polyamorous. He likes to get around.
I'm a bit monogamous, so that's gonna be a problem.
Unfortunately, he's getting a little old, and we're going to have Dwango explain this.
You see, this is a Rob Robot built in the 1980s as a way to act as a Trojan horse into the video game market, which at the time was saturated by really awful Atari games that had collapsed, and no retailer wanted to allow a video game console. So they released it as the Nintendo Entertainment System, and this guy was their piece de resistance. But let's be honest, he's getting old.
It's not staying up like it used to.
After several years of being handled at GDQ events, he had some electromechanical dysfunction. And it was at the point where he would just droop. He would just... He couldn't keep it up. His ED was just too advanced.
Rob can't keep his arms up anymore. They droop down. He has suffered from ED in old age. Luckily, Rob the Robot has found some
celebrity.
Some celebrity and added notoriety through TASBot. Some of the greatest, task runs, the Brain Age one is fantastic, where they're somehow able to manipulate.
I've never seen that one. That sounds awesome.
You're given that intro where it says 7 plus 3, and you're supposed to write out 10, but they managed to write 10 by blocking out all of the rest of the screen except the 1 and the 0, and eventually they're just drawing pictures, like a picture of Kirby, which somehow equals the right math problem.
Sure, or all you need is the specific pixels to
the right pixels,
a certain amount of them,
and they're even able to draw out an equation which is 20 steps long, but the equation is the right answer, and it's also just manipulating pixels. But
and now, is this actually on a DS?
Yeah, they're able to do tasks with that. They did a task with the original Tetris, where it takes longer for Tetris blocks to go from the top to the bottom. So what they do is they manipulate it to have a long line of straight blocks, and then they just want to be using it at the top,
like a treetop.
Because it's like a treetop. TASs are crazy. Always excited to see more about TASs. Blind runs. They do a lot of these at GDQs, where they'll bring out the greatest Mario players, and these runs are done where they haven't played this iteration of the game before, and they'll even do blind run races where
this is kind of relating even back to Super Mario Maker 2 or 1, for
all
that
of them.
matter.
Yeah,
but all of those are blind runs.
Yeah, and these top tier players are doing a race where there's 4 versus 4, and if you die, you have to pass it out.
That one is sick.
I saw you get very excited when we were.
I got jazzed on that one,
and that it's easy to get excited with that too. It's
real competition. It's just you have someone to root for. You're like, that guy's good, and then you're just oh, he's the QB.
Of course he made it. Of course Mitch made that jump.
Exactly.
Blindfolded runs. Here's a quote from Grand Poo Bear talking about the punch-out runs. Here it is. That's rough, but for me personally, Sinister's blindfolded punch-out run is such a classic. And the run that got me personally hooked on Games Done Quicks and speedrunning. Without that run, I never get to become one of the lucky shits who gets to do this all the times. At Spike Vegeta said, nothing brought more attention and the spotlight to speedrunning on the whole than the various blindfolded punch-out runs by Sinister 1 and Zallard 1. Sinister's AGDQ 2014 run was the first time I felt speedrunning shook the internet and spun a lot of heads. So essentially, it started more with Sinister at Games Done Quick, where he tried to do these punch-out NES runs blindfolded. He would get to Piston Honda, I think was the first one, and then he got further the next time. But he didn't get all the way through. There are definitely, I mean, there were other runners doing this at home, which were also pushing this, but Sinister and Zallard were the ones doing it blindfolded at these events. It got to the point where they're so good that not only has Zallard blindfold ran every one of the Punch-Out games, NES, Super Nintendo, and Wii, but the most recent one, Sinister and Zallard, they shared one controller, one left hand, one right hand, and they blindfolded beat out Punch-Out 1, which that is a level of symbiosis that I will never have with anybody.
That's some Pacific Rim shit.
Okay, so Pacific Rim, that's where you're mind melding with a robot and you have to like...
So there are two people and you meld together to move the robot.
You have to mind meld with another person to move the robot?
Yeah, have you never seen the movie?
No.
The first movie's very good.
If you could make a robot, why can't you just make it to mind meld with one person?
Well, because it's just too taxing for one person. I didn't make the rules. It's Guillermo del Toro.
Love you, Guillermo. Who will never listen to this.
I honestly think that movie still slaps. I hate to use the term slaps, but that movie is still very good.
I've heard very good things.
I love it. You want to? I'll lend it to you. I bet on Blu-ray.
We'll watch it. These runs are, I think, one of the most impressive things I've seen because it's also, I mean, if you watch the progression for the Summoning Salt video on Blindfolded NES, you can just see the strategies become more and more refined where eventually, like they're initially just trying to learn general patterns and able to kind of work around them. But
so much of it ends up being chance-based, even when you can get to an area where, like I was talking about that Castlevania run, where if you're on a certain side of the screen or you're within a certain space, a enemy will spawn from the right or the left, and then you can deal with that as you go.
Everyone in speedrunning is very detail-oriented.
Yeah.
And eventually, though, they realize that, they have certain patterns. If I do this specific punch 47 times, then he will do this thing, so I can do left, up punch. They're doing frame-perfect tricks.
Right.
And eventually, they learned also that you can do input lag, where while a punch is happening, you can program the next one. So you are manipulating the timing for every punch.
Right.
And just recently, the Mike Tyson record where the fastest Mike Tyson knockout was Summoning Salt actually was the one who got it because he spent so much time studying these things. He figured out the right way to do it.
Oh, interesting.
And you know what? If I'd spent that much time, I could probably get fourth place in Minority Report.
You'll get fourth.
Dude, what if you and I became the top Minority Report runners in the world?
You know what? I sold that game years ago. We've got to find it. I'm going to find it tomorrow on eBay. And we're actually going to get... Because you've got the ability to stream this shit.
And then another topic I wanted to talk about was randomizers. Which this is a fascinating aspect of speedrunning where...
That's become really popular recently, especially with like Legend of Zelda.
Anything that's kind of Metroidvania-ish, which I don't want to... It's not just the castle, the verticality, the platforming. It's about having an open world where items are found and give you access to more things. And what's fascinating about randomizers is you don't know what item you're going to get. So you get this specific item from later on in the game early. How can I use the grappling hook in different parts of the world to access another treasure box to get another thing?
Which you don't even know what you're going to get anyway.
So
the Pokemon ones are fascinating.
What do they do in the Pokemon ones?
So essentially when you find things out in the wild, like they'll
what Pokemon you find are random?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Like your rival might have a legendary and you'll have... You'll have like a Caterpie, yeah. That's
we both went to fucking Caterpie.
Well, Caterpie's one of the worst. Weedle's better than Caterpie, let's be honest. But what I was going to say is like sometimes it's like, sometimes they'll even put the odds against them just to test their skill. And so it'll be like every gym leader has 4 legendaries.
Or the randomizer can go the other way. They have 4 Caterpies.
And maybe you start the game with like Dialga. Or something like that. Yeah, it's really cool. I've watched a few of them, but they're like prominent PokeTubers, so who knows how they edited it.
They recently came out with the Kingdom Hearts 2 randomizer, which they had to make some concessions to the game because they're able to make this like one room where you can jump between all the worlds because otherwise it's still so linear. But you're able to go to any world at any point. Which
oh man, the last level's the Mulan one.
Regardless, they all agreed we're taking Atlantica out of there.
I doubt they would. It's just the most annoying part of the game.
But then they even get to the point where they're doing
No Atlantica.
No Atlantica speedrun.
Yeah,
that's the preferred Kingdom Hearts speedrun.
Pause here.
But then you also have Link to the Past / Super Metroid randomizer.
I've watched so many of those.
You're able to go from Metroid into Zelda and back and forth at different parts, and you get items for both games in either game.
Yeah.
And it's such a routing headache that when they do a race at Games Done Quick, it starts off cooperative for the first like hour and a half, 2 hours, where they're going to different spots to say, oh, this was there, that was there, so they can work together to figure out the mess that is the game, and eventually then it becomes a race, which is super cool. So what I wanted to mention earlier, what we're getting to here now is I've done 2 randomizers and a speed run over the past 2 days.
Oh,
of Bloodstained. So
one of your favorite games.
So what's great about Bloodstained is, and also other indie games, is a lot of modern indie games, anyways. But is that they're actually putting speedrun tools built into the game.
Smart.
Which that's. I mean, indie developers and Celeste, the people that made Celeste were actually on site at SGDQ 2019, and they took one of the enemies. You watched the TASBot run. It was during the TASBot run where they jump onto like those blocks that like move after you touch them. They added Covert Muffin. They added his laugh onto the block. They added it into the audio of the game, so every time it jumped on the block, it was...
That's cute, yeah.
Like, I asked Covert Muffin about that at the party afterwards. Like, yeah, we just like, we were in a hotel room. We just took me in the closet because it was like the quietest spot. And we just recorded me laughing a bunch. And you put it in the game beforehand. I'm like, that's amazing.
That's sick, yeah.
But the developers are there, and they know that the speedrunning community is so intense that that they consider the game. So, Bloodstained. Have you beat the game? Have you played the game? You've played it.
I've gotten maybe 75% of the way through.
So the first thing I did was a randomizer where you can randomize the items bosses drop, which is definitely something I wanted to do, but they give you all these options. You can randomize the shards enemies give you, which every enemy you kill gives you a different ability, and some of them are integral in exploring more of the castle.
Yeah, like moving giant blocks. And
so I didn't use that one at first. I just did the items, which I found ultimately to be a little limiting because there's only so many bosses that give you items. And sadly, what I did wind up doing was what I always do is I just started completing the game and I almost 100%ed it, which is not, I mean, that's not the point of a randomizer, but
you're good at the game.
So it was 8.5 hours was my first randomizer run because I just wound up beating the game and just wanted to beat every boss.
Sure.
My second randomizer, which I completed yesterday, 2.5 hours. Beat the game in 2.5 hours. And it was specifically, I need to get the double jump, or I need to get, and I did that one with where the shards are randomized, but it's great.
Double jump's important.
Because I didn't really want to start another one, but I got such a good item drop early on, a good armor drop, that it was exciting. And I was able to beat the game pretty quick. But then I actually went into the speedrun mode where it's the classic version of the game, and that was much more difficult, and it required me playing the game smarter. But what was interesting about all of these was I had to look at sequence breaking options, and I've learned ways to sequence break the game and do techniques that I wasn't able to do before, where you can like do a double jump where you have to equip a certain set of shoes, and you can do a technique, and then you also have to back jump cancel, and then you have to hit the right trigger, and then you can jump again. And it's one of those things where they do it flawlessly, and I tried 50 times in a row to get it once.
Yeah. Did you find any like instances of clipping?
There are clips. There are things where you have to get the chair shard. You sit in the chair, and you do a directional shard.
I remember that one.
I've done a chair shard before.
Yeah, that's how I got hemorrhoids.
Ayo. But my first speed run was like 2 hours and 10 minutes, where I beat the game in 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Just on its own?
Just on its own, because I've gotten better and better.
Yeah.
And the more you know how to break the game, the more you know what certain chests will get you these items.
Yeah. Memorize a map. You figure out the optimal way. Yeah.
I just kind of also wanted to talk about just some speed runs that we love. The Breath of the Wild speed run is one of the most fascinating because that is the most open world.
That game is made for almost unlimited access to begin with. And that's what I think people found most interesting when this game was put forward, because any other Legend of Zelda, it's about finding these certain amount of gems to unlock the thing. And Breath of the Wild was so open world and just like, hey, you want to know what? If you just want to go fight Ganon, you can fucking do it.
How do they telegraph that in the game? Because everybody knows. Do they actually say like, Ganon's there, you can go there, you should explore? They do something like that, right?
Well, when you meet the King of Hyrule's like, yeah, you could. Even he's like, maybe you just woke up after 100 years. Maybe you should, take a look around. Whereas I saw a playthrough where someone vaulted themselves right off the fucking plateau and found themselves in Ganon's castle.
So speaking of movement tech, Breath of the Wild, everyone knows that with stasis, you freeze an item, you can smack the shit out of it, and it'll fly in a certain direction.
Yep, that's the one.
So what they do is they smack the shit out of it, and then at the very last second, they take an arrow so you can specifically aim precisely which way you want it to fly, because that's how that works. And then they jump onto the item, and they'll fly with the item, and then throw out their parachute and just glide across so much of the map.
Yeah.
And besides that, they're able to do a million other things. But the Breath of the Wild speedrun, it's like less than an hour. And that is just routing perfection.
I would say less than 30 minutes.
Mario Odyssey. I mean, any Mario speedrun is always going to be fascinating too, because everyone's played everyone has got strong feelings and have experience with Mario games.
But the 3D Marios especially, they're easy to play, hard to master.
I'm thinking 64 is still the most played speedrun. I don't know where to find those numbers, but
his moveset is so rich and complicated that the way Mario can jump in the weird ways you can kind of be like, all right, so we're gonna do this type of triple jump, and then we're gonna do a backflip, and then maybe because you did that in that direct sequence, he gets maybe a meter more of distance.
It's incredibly simple, but deceptively complex.
Yeah, I love watching. I'll watch anyone play Mario 64. I just think that aesthetically and just everything about it kind of vibes with me.
And then you have Mario Sunshine, where you see the possibilities of FLUDD.
Yeah.
And they are stomping these levels. They are flying through them. They're skipping everything, because FLUDD, it has speed possibilities. It has float possibilities. It has they use, when you have to clear the mud, they just keep slapping the right trigger instead of holding it, which somehow clears it faster.
It has like a shotgun kind of wideness,
which works better somehow.
I did figure that out as a kid, which is strange enough. But I got tired of doing this, like click, 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 click.
Did you watch some of the Odyssey runs?
I've seen a few of the Odyssey runs. What's weird about it is I didn't like watching the more recent games. I liked watching the old games.
Mario Odyssey is interesting because of the Cappy movement tech, because they're able to skip so many things because
you create your own bounce pads.
It's so bizarre how you create a bounce pad, then you can jump off the wall, create another bounce pad, jump up, and then throw your hat one more time to grab stuff. Watching top tier Mario Odyssey speedrunners also breaks my mind. There's so many speedruns that are fantastic. One of the non-conventional ones that I think it was H Bomber Guy you had mentioned earlier brought up was the World of Warcraft Classic, when they dropped Classic.
Oh,
because you might not have seen this one, but there was a race to level 60 because when the Classic dropped, everyone's default it's a Classic game.
It's a new run.
There was professional esports teams that like assembled like squads. Like we're going to be the first one to get to level 60. It's almost like Ready Player One, like the first one to accomplish the Easter eggs.
Now, if you even know how hard it is in any RPG to reach level 60, that's pretty nuts.
To reach the max level of the time.
I don't know what the average is for World of Warcraft, but I just know that it took me forever.
And it was Jokered, however you want to say it. He was the first one to hit 60. He was a small speedrunner at the time. Gained notoriety, gained followers, gained sponsorship, and
for World of Warcraft Classic
for getting the first to 60 because it was a fucking race.
Oh,
and
I guess I didn't.
There's a tangible money value to these things.
Fuck.
Some of my other favorite speedruns, I always want to go back to the original Castlevania. I don't know the name of the runner. I'm going to look it up. The Castlevania speedrun that got me into speedrunning is by FunkDoc at Awesome Games Done Quick 2013. Great guy. It's just fun to watch people break the games.
A lot of damage boosting in Castlevania.
So I also just wanted to bring up the Summer Games Done Quick 2020 lineup because, as everyone who is listening right now knows, Summer Games Done Quick is this weekend. Starts this Sunday.
Wow, I'm going to watch it.
And I am going to watch it when I can as well. Some of the things I wanted to mention, though, some of the runs. Smash Brothers 64, blindfolded, break the targets, all characters.
Fuck off.
I just put down a bunch here. Is there any there that strike you as interesting?
Yeah. Pokemon Shield, 5 hours and 25 minutes.
That's the estimation. So it'll probably be closer to 5 hours.
Yeah. In Pokemon Shield specifically.
Yeah. I guess I don't know the difference with Sword and Shield.
The main difference is that there are a few Pokemon that change that are exclusive to it.
It's much like all the other, like back to Blue and Red, right?
Yeah. As time went on, there were less and less differences, but it's Zamazenta rather than Zacian. I would be interested in this one because basically all you have to do is get the right starter, the fastest starter, which would probably be Score Bunny, and then you would go through the line, and there are a few gym leaders that are different.
Yeah.
In each version.
And this goes back to RNG manipulation where watching a Pokemon Crystal run with Keizaron from 2019.
I think I saw a part.
He takes multiple attempts to get the exact right DV for a starter Pokemon, and you have to do the right manipulation of you have to hit this button at this time, and then because without that specific DV for that Pokemon, all of your battles won't work out the way they need to.
Well, when you also look back at like Red and Blue, if you don't get Bulbasaur right away, you're fucked.
Some other things that sounded interesting: Knights of the Old Republic, 80%, estimated 51 minutes. That's pretty quick.
Jesus Christ!
Well, I mean, you're breaking the game there, and that's one of those things where with RPGs, I know that you are going to do some real fuckery to beat the game, but something like Horizon Zero Dawn Ultra Hard Mode, 55 minutes. That's a game where you have so much access to the map early on. If you know what you're doing, you're also doing a lot of fuckery, but you can get to a certain area where you are. It's like sequence breaking Bloodborne, where you're not supposed to get to this room before you do these other things, but if you do, the game just keeps going.
Yeah, because they don't account for that. Yeah, I guess I get that. Monkey Ball 2, all story levels.
That's exciting. I don't know what the time is, but they break Monkey Ball where
I've seen some Monkey Ball stuff that like really fucking blows my mind.
The frame buffering is fucking crazy. Where the pause buffering, I should say, the pause buffering where they need a specific 53.08, and if you do that specific number and like these button inputs, it shouldn't be possible. FF7 remake, 7 hours 20 minutes. That I don't know if there's going to be much sequence.
I never played it, so I don't know.
I don't think there'll be a lot of sequence breaking there, but awful games.
I doubt there's a lot of sequences to break because it seems like
it's pretty linear.
It's mission-based linear.
I'm curious. And maybe if it's easy mode, it's probably just doing everything as quick as possible. Awful games done quick. They're going to feature Pringles, the video game, which sounds cool.
Oh, fuck yeah. And Night Trap. Honestly, Night Trap's not an awful game.
Nope.
It's basically Five Nights at Freddy's.
Except with ladies.
Yeah, but you just have to like trapdoor some goobers in black suits. It's not crazy.
All right. So we're going to read some Twitter responses from some of our friends.
At Covert Muffin says Strider AGDQ 2018, which features a tutorial and someone running the game who hadn't played it before with an expert coaching them beforehand. He had to say this: speedrunning is far more accessible than people may initially think. This is thanks to the majority of people who are passionate about speedrunning being very welcoming and willing to help people learn, celebrate their accomplishment, and more.
At Van Sant John says, when Darby and SRL hit 4 minutes 50 seconds on Super Mario Bros. 1, it made a lot of news. Almost every gaming news outlet mentioned it, and a bunch of non-gaming outlets as well. I remember seeing videos on Facebook of people who never heard of speedrunning calling Darb a cheater.
At Mick Rosso, one of my absolute favorite of all time races was Super Mario Bros. 3 with Mitch Flower Power and Grand Poo Bear. With all the setback, just showed how great fun and sportsmanship is such a big part of all of it for me. What a race.
At Biscuit 1337 says, at NES Cardinality.
Leet.
Oh, that's Leet. At NES Cardinality and his incredible RNG manipulation of Dragon Warrior.
Dragon Quest in Japan. At Judge Tempest. I will never forget downloading segmented speedruns of Halo levels and having my mind blown by the skips and different strategies I would have never considered. Back then, computers didn't have as much storage, but I loved having my speedrunning folder I could show to my friends.
And a special thanks for this episode goes out to friends of the podcast, Covert Muffin, Keizaron, JHobz, Spike Vegeta, Omnigamer, DwangoAC, Grand Poo Bear, Kung Fu Fruit Cup, Sinister One, Zallard One, Judge Tempest, Summoning Salts, Carl Jobst, H Bomber Guy, everyone at Games Done Quick, Funk Doc, Arcus. The list goes on forever. The entire speedrun community, and most importantly, you. Dylan, if anyone wanted to support our podcast, how could they do that?
They can find us on patreon.com. We have multiple tiers. There are different benefits to each of them. You just have to go in and take a look for yourself. But most of the great stuff you're going to get even as low as the $3 range.
And Dylan, if you had to recommend one episode of Raw Dogs for someone to go back and listen to out of our past 20 episodes.
You know what? I've heard from multiple people that our Mortal Kombat lore was actually very entertaining.
I've heard that too. I've heard a lot of good things about the Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
We have a 3-part FF7 that's really good. The BioWare episode is great. But what I'm going to personally recommend is the Batman versus Spider-Man. I thought that one was that was fantastic.
It's just fun to it's just kind of cool because I would have never played half of these licensed games.
And if you want to watch Dylan and I squirm, check out the Sonic the Hedgehog lore episode.
Oh, I didn't squirm. I loved it.
We're Raw Dogs. We're part of Hair the Dogcast. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Hair the Dogcast. We're on Twitter at Hot Dogcast. Follow us on there.
Also, please, if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to receive them. Send it to our email, hairthedogcast@gmail.com.
And also, if we did happen to say anything wrong, just tweet at us. We'd love to retweet it and share it around.
That's perfectly fine. We are not experts on this.
Summer Games Done Quick 2020. If you're listening to this right when this comes out or shortly afterwards, the event's coming up. Donate to these charities because they are helping a lot of really special organizations. And, just keep gaming. In the words of Sonic, he's got to go fast. I don't.
I was going to make a sex joke, but then
I've been told 100% speedrun is better in that scenario.
Well, I mean,
I strive for
whatever she tells you.
I strive for low percentage. We're the Raw Dogs. Thanks for listening. We love you. We'll see you next time, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hear blue glass. Using the hashtag AGQ2016. It's really hard not to.